to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming to the executive meeting scheduled for 6 p.m. September 8, 2022. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act of the State of New Jersey, adequate notice of this meeting of the Egg Harbor City Common Council was provided in the following manner. Advance written notice of this meeting was posted on the Egg Harbor City Hall bulletin board. Advance written notice of this meeting was posted on the Egg Harbor City website. Advance written notice of this meeting was sent to Hamilton Gazette, the News, Press, and Current. The meeting is being conducted via Zoom and conference call. The meeting is also being recorded to air on the Egg Harbor City website, Channel 97, and the Egg Harbor City Facebook page. You have a roll call, please.
Yes. Mayor Petty. Here. Antonisi. Here. Brown. Here. Mr. Dash will not be here. Vice. Here. Hesse. Here. Timbers. Trifall.
Here.
Wright.
Here.
And Rich.
All right, I'd like to move into an executive session. I have a motion to open to executive.
Second.
All in favor? All right. This has concluded our executive session regarding matters at hand. If I can have a motion.
Make a motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. See everybody 7 p.m. Everyone rise for the flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'd like to thank everybody for attending tonight's regular scheduled council meeting for September 8, 2022. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act of the State of New Jersey, adequate notice of this meeting at the Egg Harbor City Common Council was provided in the following manner. Advance written notice of this meeting was posted on the Egg Harbor City Hall bulletin board. Advance written notice of this meeting was posted on the Egg Harbor City website. Advance written notice of this meeting was sent to the Hamilton Gazette, News, Press, and the Current. The meeting is being conducted via Zoom and conference call. The meeting is also being recorded to air on the Egg Harbor City website, Channel 97, and the Egg Harbor City Facebook page. Mayor, roll call, please.
Mayor Petty. Here. Antonisi. Here. Brown. Here. Mr. Dash will not be in attendance. Ms. Heist. Here. Hesse. Here. Mr. Timbers.
Here.
Mr. Trifall.
Here.
Mr. Wright.
Here.
And Mr. Rich.
Here. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting on August 25th?
Make a motion.
Second. All in favor? All right, at this time, we have a presentation scheduled. Superintendent of the Greater Egg Harbor School District, Mr. James Brana. He has a short PowerPoint presentation for us. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, thank you. Here.
Right there.
First off, thank you for the opportunity. Over the last month, I have gone to each of the town council meetings in Mullica, Galloway, Hamilton, and now Egg Harbor City. I was in Hamilton this morning as well as all the different Board of Education I've met with. We have a referendum coming up October 6th that will see improvements at all three of our high schools. Students from Egg Harbor City attend all three high schools. Cedar Creek is a home school. There are students at Amsterdam and Oakcrest. And we have a vote on October 6th. And we want to make sure that all the information that is in the community is accurate. And I want to avail myself of all the Board of Education and councils answering questions. The PowerPoint that I have just runs through a couple of things real quick. I'll focus on Cedar Creek as well as kind of the overview, if you will, of the district. The second page that'll come up, and what you have in your folder, the handout is identical to what's coming up on the screen. Second page. Yeah. The second page is just kind of an overview of where we have been the last few years, because I think it's important for people to understand. We have a $82 million operating budget for Greater Egg. The second bullet is something, when we go through this specific referendum, we decided to use our large majority of our COVID funds over the last 3 years of federal government funding to do work that 3 years ago was in this project. So by using the COVID funds, we removed it from a taxpayer burden. the federal government and the state government allowed for anything that dealt with air quality to be considered available for funding usage. So as you can see there, we've completed just about 6 million out, just under 6 million out of just under 9 directly dealt with HVAC issues. And those were items that 3 years ago, pre-COVID, when we first started talking about this project, all of that HVAC work was in the referendum. So we were able to pull those items out.
I could have done a million today.
You can see kind of our breakdown there in general. Obviously, everybody, when I say everybody, I mean educational systems put money into technology, one-on-one Chromebooks for students, upgraded technology for staff. That was certainly a big part of our purchases over the last couple of years. I also believe very strongly, we have increased our partnerships with Atlantic Care and another company we use called ESS, and we now have at minimum of 4 mental health professionals, not guidance or CST, just 4 mental health professionals in each of the 3 buildings. We're paying that now with our grant funds. We have 2 more years paying with grant funds, and then we're hoping to roll that staff into our budget over time. And again, with everything that kids have gone through over the last couple of years, we now have what they call Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 services in each of our buildings. Tier 1 can be a little proactive. Tier 2 is kids that are having some minor incidents or are starting to come on your radar. Unfortunately, if any of you know, Tier 3 is a student that's identified self-harm, is dealing with addiction issues, either their own or their families, homelessness, that type of issue. The next page is Absegami, and it's just some of the items are common across all 3 buildings. Like I said, I'll focus on Creek because that is the home school for Egg Harbor. Absegami actually has the highest dollar amount being committed in this project. You can see it's just about 7.8 million. One of the things that we are proud of with this project is between the performing arts and between the athletics and between the wood shops and between some other stuff, we are touching roughly 90% of our students with some aspect of this project. So this is not, I know one of the things people have heard in the community is, oh, they're rebuilding a football field. And I'll come to that. But by the time you get drama and choir and dance and band involved across all 3 auditoriums, that alone right there is a huge chunk of our kids. So there's the work on Absegami. You can certainly look through it. And this PowerPoint is also on a website that I'll tell anybody who's interested where they can find it also. The next page is Oakcrest, slightly smaller dollar amount. Oakcrest and Absegami are getting larger dollar amounts. They're older, there's more work to do. Again, there's a lot of similarities. A lot of what we are doing also is already open to the community, or we are looking to increase our openness to the community. So the tennis courts and the tracks at all 3 buildings are used by the communities. You see at Oakcrest, one of the things I'm most interested in, the red kind of path leading around, and there's a red rectangle all the way to the left. There's a yellow rectangle down on the bottom, number 2. If you spend any time around Oakcrest or Gami over the years, you know there's poor movement around those facilities for either handicapped or seniors. So we are blacktopping and concrete walkways around there, and we're building new parking lots closer to some of the facilities. So grandparents or you know, those that might have mobility issues can get a little closer to what they want to see. And then the next page is Cedar Creek. You can see it's just about $6 million. I'll run through this kind of in specifics. I'll start at the bottom, number 4. That's the Performing Arts Center. We are doing all new lighting, all new sounds, including wireless mics and upgrades for all the performers. Brand new light board, brand new soundboard. That scope of the project is going to be identical in all 3 buildings. Selfishly, that's a huge benefit to us because right now we have everything that has been bought over the last 20 years in all of those rooms, and nothing is the same anywhere. So we want to now have 3 uniformed sets of equipment so we can enter, I believe, in service contracts we can now enter into a service contract with somebody to make sure this equipment across all 3 buildings is treated the same way and kept up. I'm sure some of you know, some of you may not. I was actually the principal that built and opened Cedar Creek. One of the things we struggled with when we built that, and I'll just do a small side here, the state was in control of the project, and the state is, well, who can we get it from the cheapest, as anybody who's worked on state contracts knows. So we did not have control of the sound at that time. We did not have control of the light at that time. The state told us who we were going to pay. The
All right, this is
security.
motion. I'm hoping you're going to spend about 2 to 3 minutes.
As soon as we built that building, those systems were active. This will give us an opportunity. We will be picking the products. We already have all 3 of our band directors and all 3 of our chorus directors doing research on soundboards and sound systems, so we can make sure now we can get what we want. If you move clockwise, rather, number 2 is the tennis courts. The tennis courts at all 3 buildings are going to get a complete strip down and resurfacing. Tennis courts at all 3 buildings and Cedar Creek, obviously, are utilized by the community, especially if you go in there on weekends. There's a lot of community members taking advantage of the courts. I'm not an engineer. I'm just an educator. I think they built those courts too soon after they built that ground, and they did not properly allow for it to settle. 12 years later, that ground is settled. We shored up the back end of it. We're confident now resurfacing those tennis courts, and we'll get the 20 years out of it you're supposed to get. Instead of the last 4 or 5 years, we've actually been going out with hot tar and actually filling the cracks every season to try and keep it up. Moving around, number 3 right now is the varsity soccer field in the fall and a lacrosse field in the spring. It's not crowned properly. We're going to re-crown that since it's used in both the fall and the spring. If it doesn't drain right, there are absolutely issues with how long it lasts and how the upkeep is. And then number 1 is kind of the largest item in all 3 buildings. And again, that is common in all 3. The lower rectangle in the lower left-hand corner is finally a true concession stand with permanent bathrooms instead of porta potties and cooking on a grill under a tent. That'll bring us in line with what is in the other 2 buildings. At Oakcrest and Absegami, there's actually going to be revisions and upgrades made to those 2 buildings because they are aged. And then all 3 buildings get a turf field within the stadium. And this is where there has been some misinformation or some misunderstanding. As everybody knows, the last few years, Cedar Creek's football team has been successful, but this is not a football field. It will be lined for football, field hockey, soccer for boys and girls, and lacrosse for boys and girls. The goal in all three schools is to have the turf field become a game day only field. So the ADs will schedule girls soccer on Tuesday and Thursday, boys soccer on Monday and Wednesday. All home games will be played within the stadium. That'll also give a little bit more time, especially at Cedar Creek, for the fields to rest on game days. They'll now get a couple days a week where they're not being used. Cedar Creek, and some of you know this, we've had conversations about it. Cedar Creek is only 66 acres. Oakcrest and Absegami are both over 110. The availability at Cedar Creek for field is only about 60 to 65% of what Oakcrest and Absegami have. So the turf, while it's going in all 3 buildings, at Cedar Creek especially, becomes vitally important because we don't have the opportunity to rest fields at Cedar Creek. The other thing the turf allows us to do, and I've had conversations with people at the Crusaders, we've had conversations with Mays Landing Athletic Association in Galloway as well. The turf allows us to turn the stadium over to local athletic programs after we're done with it on weekends at no cost to use the facility. So we are saying the Egg Harbor City Crusaders can now play their football games there on Saturdays. We are saying Mullica Soccer, Cedar Creek is the home for Mullica Soccer. Mullica Soccer can play on the stadium if they choose at no cost. The only fee would be is if we are closed, you would have to pay for a custodian or a guard to be on the grounds. Okay. We will honor that of not charging our middle schools as well. Egg Harbor City is a little smaller. It doesn't have all the programs that say Hamilton does, but as an example, in Hamilton, we're going to let William Davies soccer and field hockey use the fields also at no cost. We want to kind of try and make it so the high schools go back to, and I'm going to sound nostalgic, but what they used to be, where the high schools was where all the town athletic events kind of happen. We can't do it with grass. They just get chewed up too fast. This will allow us to do that. So I've had those conversations with all of the community partners. You know, in a perfect world, varsity soccer has a game at 4 o'clock. Mullica Rec comes on the field at 6 o'clock. They get to watch the big kids play the last half of the game. They go on and they practice, and our kids can stick around and help out. Saturday morning, our football team's out there practicing in the morning, watching film. They walk outside and they can watch some of the Crusaders football on a Saturday afternoon. That's the vision that we have for these fields. We don't charge now for the use of our track if the middle schools use it. We don't charge for the use of our baseball or softball with Davies. But again, we haven't been able to allow them into our stadiums because the stadiums just can't be used 5-6 days a week. Grass doesn't hold up. The next page. So this is where people need to kind of follow the ball. The total cost of this project is $21 million. However, we are ultimately going to be looking over the 20 years to only put a little less than $11 million down. We have qualified right now for $8.8 million in state aid. As I'm sure you all know, the way it works for schools, we don't get that money if we don't do this project. It's not like we can say, just give us the $8 million and we'll use that. We've already been approved for the state. These are not numbers that are estimates. These are not numbers that this is what we hope for. This is what we have submitted to the state. This is what we have received back in writing that we paid for. As we mentioned earlier, we all got COVID money. I know communities got COVID money as well. So that estimated state share 6 months ago, that number was 2.4 million. The state has cash. The state is paying for things they do not normally pay for. The state's paying 42% of the 3 tracks. The state's paying 42% of the 3 tennis courts. The state's paying 42% of all of the drainage and underneath work in the stadiums. The state's paying for a portion of the bleachers. They don't normally pay for those items. They have cash right now. They're telling everybody, they are increasing state aid now. And that money's gone, that money's gone. And I don't mean to sound like, you know, it's an now or never thing, but if we go back out in 3 years, that number is not going to be $8.8 million. That number is going to be probably somewhere between 2.4 and 3. The other thing I want to point out is these numbers are up to date. They reflect revisions that we made roughly 60 days ago. Maybe the short version, we were out to bid for some work at Oak Crest, and we were getting final estimates on this project. And Russia invaded Ukraine, and in 2 days, costs went through the roof. Some items, if they were petroleum dependent, saw an increase of as much as 40% in 48 hours. Since then, you know, as I'm sure you've all seen, petroleum's gone from 120 a barrel. It's back into the 80s. It's not where it was before the war started, but it's starting to creep back down. I just mentioned that so everybody knows the numbers you have in front of you are real. They allowed for that increase, and now as stuff starts to come down, it can actually work out in our favor. The next page is a couple of just some information I want to put out there. So again, you know what, I'm sorry, one more piece. That 12.1 million is the local share. I apologize. We set aside over the last 2 years, the BA and I have set aside 1.25 for capital improvements. We're going to put that 1.25 directly to this, to again lower the amount. So ultimately, the taxpayer portion over 20 years becomes 10 million, roughly 980,000 out of a $21 million project. One of the things we've told people from the beginning, we are able to do this without changing anybody's cost basis as it exists right And we were able to do that because we are paying off our 2002 referendum for Assagamie High School. So we will be able to slide this new $550,000 a year debt plus interest payment directly into the spot in our budget that is our 2002 referendum. So our debt service will not have an increase. It's within $6 depending upon which community you live in, up or down, per year. I'm being upfront, I'm being transparent, especially because I heard somebody told me the other day, well, somebody told me if this goes down, that's my kid's Christmas money. And I said, well, I don't know what you get your kid for Christmas, but I don't think that's accurate. So that next page lists, if this votes down, question is, you pay off the 2002 Assagamie referendum, how much am I going to save? That's the number right there on that page. That's for the average assessed home in Egg Harbor City. So in Egg Harbor City, it's a $14.68 saving per year for the average assessed home. If your home's assessed at twice the average value, you're saving $29. That again is a function of that increase in state aid to a great extent, and the fact that we're paying off old debt and we're sliding the new debt in. That increase in the state aid, you can see, is what allows us to say there's no increase to local communities and costs. And by the way, for what it's worth, I live in the district too. I live in Mays Landing. My daughter's a sophomore at Ashland. The last thing I just want to point out, and then I'll answer anybody's questions, because this is something connected to what I said earlier, and I want to make sure everybody follows it. That debt service aid, that state aid, just to be clear, those are tax dollars we've all already paid. Those are state tax dollars they've already collected. They go out for educational programs. In the spring, roughly 75% of all referendums in the state of New Jersey were approved. Smallest one was about 3 million, largest one was about 400 million. State aid was a factor in each and every one of those. And I only say that because, again, this money's gonna go to somebody. It's not like I can say, can you sit on the 8 million for a year? We wanna come back and see what happens. If it's not a part of this project, it goes to other communities. And I think that's an important component, especially when we can say we can maintain people's cost threshold. And even if it were to go the other direction, it would be minimal change. It really is, we're passionate about the timing kind of falling in line just right for us. State having cash, us paying off old debt, and our ability to do this now. We have already worked with our engineers, we've already worked with our architects. Part of the reason why we're going out now, this is actually the first day for the 22-23 school year that you're eligible to go out for a referendum. State tells you there's 5 days. You only go out on these 5 days. We're purposely going out on the first day because we also know we have all of our backup work done. We want to be able to go out to bid, secure the bids, and enter contract as soon as possible, instead of being caught later in the year, and now you are chasing people who may already have work. Typically, as you know, bid prices go up as you get later on in the year. So that's why we are moving as early in the year as we can. The vote is October 6th. I'm here to answer any questions anybody has.
Too. My first thing is I see Cedar Creek is up for lights. They've been waited for a long time, and that's a good thing. My other thing
It was
is,
part of the original. Half the work's done. People don't realize that. And Christie, on a Friday afternoon, sent us a letter and said, you're not getting lights.
So Friday nights.
So, yeah.
my other thing is, I sat on the school board at Egg Harbor City for many years. I was involved with the community school and when Cedar Creek was built. You said that the state aid, when you go through the state, we all know that they tell you who you have to use as your contractors. If you're going through the state with state funding, it's not the same
It's
type
not
of
the
funding.
same. We have to take lowest reasonable bid, but we are allowed to, I'm sure some of you know this, we are allowed to create the specs in such a way that we make sure we get what we want. So if my 6 band and choir guys say, look, either one of these 2 soundboards will do, we're gonna write the specs in such a way that we make sure those boards are what's gonna be involved in the project, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I just wanted to make sure people were aware that if the state isn't going to tell you.
The
where you
state, the
have to
state does
go,
not
how
have the
you to
capability
do
at
it.
this time. There, before, I sat at a table like this once a week in a trailer out in the snow. And the guy sitting across the table from me from the old Department of Ed would say, no, we've changed our mind. Here, this is the security system you're gonna get. And that's not an issue with this project. What other questions can I answer?
Hi, first I just want to say thank you for coming, appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So my only issue with this is that I think there are 3 schools involved, Acorn City, we're receiving a lesser amount than the other 2 schools. If something were to happen and this governor decides, oh, no lights. So those funds that are for the lights, do we get to reallocate that to something else? Or do we, or is our
Well,
overall funding?
So at this point, they don't have the authority to tell us no lights anymore. And I'll get to the rest of your question, but that's the
Any
first.
one item.
No, they don't. This question has already been approved to go on the referendum. The language has already been identified, and all the attorneys in the county have okayed it. That's all already done. At this point, there's nothing anybody can step in and do to say, no, we've decided you don't need that. This is our project. And to that point, when we submit work projects to the Department of Ed, I said earlier, they've already approved everything. The lights are in that approval process. And I already have a letter from the Department of Ed, from the Commissioner's office saying, yes, we approve lights for Cedar Creek High School as part of this project. So at this point, there's really no legal remedy for them to step in, because I already have the piece of paper that they approved everything in this project.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I just got one thing, James.
Yeah.
Do we have like, once it gets approved, or what's like the station of the basic
It's
completion?
a good question. The majority of the work is probably gonna be made in September next year, okay? Depending on what it is, we may be able to start as early as coming out of Easter. And again, that's why it's important that we've already started doing a lot of our design work.
Right.
And it's also important that we're early in the year so we can begin trying to acquire the contracts for the equipment and supplies as soon as possible. One of the things, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse, one of the things we've already started looking at, this is my mind with the ADs, Oakcrest track is not in the stadium.
Right.
So I could actually probably start doing the Oakcrest turf
Mhm.
coming out of Easter break. So now that I don't have to do 3 turf stadiums in the
Right.
summer, I only have to do 2. And, Absegami may make a decision, well, you know what? Do our track coming out of Easter break, we'll just run away for a year.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'll be, and then I don't have to do 3 tracks in the summer. I could do 1 track. I could do Cedar Creek in the summer and Oakcrest, because it's not in the stadium, I can do in the fall. At Oakcrest, it's weird. It's just the way the school is laid out. The track's actually on the field hockey field. Well, if the field's turfed, field hockey can play, it's gonna be playing all their games up there anyway, so I can do that track in the fall. So we are already starting to see where the puzzle pieces can fit to minimize the impact and also to try and get it done as quickly as possible. Any other questions?
You were saying that it can fluctuate on as far as the products that you're using. So our taxes can also go down, as our share of it can also go down as well as.
It could, and that we purposely, again, when we revalued those numbers, we used the cost of petroleum products at that time. It's already starting to slow down a little bit. We also build a contingency in. So we have a small, if you will, a pot in there that if something were to happen along the way, we can do other projects. So for example, we've looked at, we might go in and now start working on all of the stage lighting in addition to all of the overhead and floor lighting. That's something we could do. And it would still fall within the scope of the project. At Oakcrest, we might do more, even more path work or something like that. As long as it's related to what we're already doing, we can then try and make those adjustments.
Thank you.
things that you're redoing that's still functional, do you have a plan for those? For example, like the scoreboard or the lights?
So we're not, the scoreboards that are gonna be identified in each building, it's a good question, are the scoreboards that are already giving us problems. So for example, I don't need to touch the football scoreboard at Creek. It's good, it looks good, it works great. Absegami, you need somebody to like, lick their fingers and put
That's our scoreboard.
and put the wires, and put the wires together.
But I got
So-
you every.
Right, so like I know at Absegami, the AD's like, look, I need a football scoreboard. One of the things we did with some of the extra capital reserve last year, the AD and I, because we wanted to make sure that all of our athletes were feeling the same. We are now in the process of installing, for example, a scoreboard that's gonna cover all three schools' field hockey teams. They never had scoreboards. So that's something we're doing now, using our own monies. So the scoreboards that are picked in this will be the ones that are not functioning. The soundboard and stuff like that, I mean, if I can work with any of our sending districts or churches or, we do have some guidelines on what we can do with it as a public entity, as I know you guys do. But, we're not gonna be taking stuff that's functional and throwing it in a dumpster. We actually now, we've got a connection. We send a bunch of stuff down south to some, poor rural communities that we actually send some books and some other stuff down. Any other questions?
The only thing I have is like with market staters, whatever, say we go to use the field, how will the lights work?
Well, again, if we've got a guard or a custodian there, we'll know how to.
No, I mean, as far as
yeah.
like fee wise, like with an outside organization have to.
You're gonna pay for a guard or a custodian if we're closed. And that's because again,
Mhm.
we want all
Oh,
three
yeah,
schools
definitely.
to get back to that
Mhm.
field. And we want the little kids to look at the big kids.
Exactly.
I was telling somebody the story, I can still remember as a 7th grade soccer player, I knew the names of every varsity soccer player in the town where I live because I idolized them.
Mhm.
And we're all now so spread out
Yep.
in all four of these communities and the 3 schools.
Yep.
I think it'd be nice to get some of that
Take
going.
it back how it was, right?
Jody, are there any people on the Zoom that want to ask questions? Thank you. I can't see how to do that.
Two.
I have a question. Hi. Hi, Mr. Rayner, how you been?
Good, how are you? I can't see who it is, I'm sorry.
Oh, Annette Galloway.
Hi,
I
Nanette.
just have one question about the turf fields. I've heard horror stories in the past about them. Can you speak to the safety of them these days?
They have continually evolved as they have become more and more prevalent. One of the last pages, I know you'll see, there are actually now more high schools in the Cape Atlantic that have turf than don't. They have evolved in that. That's a good question. Again, it's something that we can create the specs. There are 4 or 5 different options, but there are really 2 or 3 that are better quality. And the quality specifically has to do with the drainage as well as they measure the impact on the body. So we would certainly specify the better quality. And that's something that we have priced into this structure. Over the last 10 years, I mean, I've gone around the league and I'm not going to say schools' names out loud, but I can tell you the 3 fields I walk on and I'm saying to myself like, oh my God, I wish I was 17 again. And I can tell you the couple of schools that I can't believe they made the decision they made. And I know they saved money at the time, but in the long run, they're gonna end up having to replace it quicker, or it absolutely feels different. So that's a good question.
And what's the lifespan of such a field?
The good ones now, it's very reasonable to expect 15 years out of them. And the nice thing is when you move forward, you don't have to redo all the subterranean work. You don't have to redo the drainage, the rock, the sand. You're essentially are just laying carpet down. So you end up with a number. I hear anywhere from roughly 30% of the cost of a project. That's something I could put in over 3 years. Each school, I do 1 field a year and I reskin it. That's something we can budget for over time.
Okay. Well, I just want to say, I think it's great that you're making investments in our kids and without it costing additional money to the taxpayers. I think that's big and I would support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you give us that website that you were?
Yeah, I'm gonna have handout. I'll give you guys handouts. It's vote.gehrhst.net. But the handout that I'll make available, if you guys are okay with that, it's the red sheet that's in yours. You'll see the website right on there. That also has a list of 30 or 35 frequently asked questions. So I would suggest if things are popping in your mind, read through that frequently asked question list, and you may find the answer right there.
Judy, don't we have that on our website already? I'm sure you put, I'm sure you, I think you can.
Well, I'll get you guys copies right now.
Here, they can have.
Here, we each have, there's two.
Yeah, well, I didn't know if you would have anybody. Thank you, sir. No, just if there's two in there, because I didn't know, split families or whatever the case may be. If you're like me, somebody always takes something out of everything you walk in the house with. Absolutely.
Oh, you have to go to the packet?
Okay, I really appreciate your time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good luck with everything.
Thank you. Hey, 3 days down, 177 to go.
Yeah.
All right. I'd like to move on to number 9 on the agenda. Anybody from the public have any comments on any agenda items? All right. Mayor, the floor is yours for your report.
Final report from the Egg Harbor City Lake, as everyone knows, we closed right after Labor Day. So here goes. Badges, $7. Badges, that's pre-season, $1,744. $10, $1,777. $4, $436. $5 wristbands, $13,749. The total of badges, $17,706, with a dollar amount of $101,251. Picnic tables, 15 and 10, total is $1,687, for a total dollar amount of $23,040. Boat rides, 949, total dollar amount $4,745. Gazebo and miscellaneous items is $694. 2022 sales to date from lake operations only is $129,730. Last year, 2021 was $105,362, with a variance of $24,368 over last year. So with the campground payment, payment number 1 and 2 adds up to $12,791. And the total revenue for the all lake operations is $142,521. Many of you may or may not know, when I hire for the lake in early spring, we boost our roles up to 26 employees. And I would like to name these employees. We have 18 lifeguards, 7 badge checkers, and 1 manager who is not a certified lifeguard, but just the adult. Karen Luca, she's the manager. Our lifeguards, Randall Bean, David Casterhone, Alana Crossing, Robert Gowdy, Chanel Johnson, Madeline Lee, Skylar Lee, Clarence Mays, Zalia Mazzone, Antonia Monroe, John Nass, Brianna Ratcliffe, Tony Rivera, Keishla Sanchez, Billy Smith, Nate Tunnett, Violet Vogel, Sophia Zandervash. Badgers, or badge checkers, Brad Bolio, Destiny Chavez, Doug Golden, Cassidy Judson, Gianna Kennedy, Mackenzie Lane Nice, and Alana Rothenberger. I say their names to say that they did a fantastic job out at the lake, and probably not many of you might know them, but I just wanted to make you aware that we had a really good crew out there, and we had a really good year. Couple things we're gonna go through next year, hopefully, and make a couple of changes, but nothing major, so that's about it. Also, the only other thing I have here is, well, I have two more things. Varsity Day at Cedar Creek is this Saturday. I did put something on the Facebook page, the official Facebook page about it. James, what time does that start? Well,
I'm sorry.
What time does Varsity Day start?
Actually, the
12.
first game is at 9.
Nine.
Because there's girls volleyball, boys soccer, girls soccer, field hockey, girls tennis, cross country, all scattered from 9 to 12, and then football kicks off at 1:30.
Okay. So that's this week, and, well, I'm sure Mason will tell you about Crusaders. I won't. October 15th, the Economic Development Corporation is planning their fall festival on the 100 block of Philadelphia Avenue. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to committee chair reports, for finance and redevelopment, we had a meeting last night regarding personnel matters and pending litigation. Looks to be another one scheduled within the next month or so. Safety, Councilman Trifle. Highway, property parks and playgrounds, Councilwoman Heist. Councilman Wright, utility? No. Councilwoman Brown, license ordinance or school board?
Nothing.
All right, Councilman Timbers, land use board and Aaron Hoffman.
Nothing at this time.
Jackie, anything with Jeff? And Councilwoman Hesse, sustainable Echo City.
Nothing.
All righty, Chief, your report.
Good evening, everyone. So, these are numbers from last meeting on August 25th through today. We had a total of 5 burglary reports, 5 theft reports, 7 motor vehicle accidents, 8 pedestrian stops, 22 traffic stops. We issued 2 pedestrian stops and checks, where summonses were issued, and for traffic stops, we had a total of 37 traffic stops and 22 tickets were issued for that. Sorry, the numbers are a little bit off. Total arrests 6 that we've had since that time period. Alarms, 9 alarms, 2 residential alarms, 9 business alarms, 107 crime prevention activities, 1 criminal history report, 4 domestic violence incidents, 19 EMS incidents, 14 firearms ID applications, 16 follow-up investigations, 488 property checks, and 11 public service calls that we responded to. Total calls for service in this time period has been 890. Operation support training inspections. We did have our crossing guard training. It's annual training that the insurance company does come do. So that was done before the start of school. So everybody's up to date with everything that they need to do there. We had 1 officer attend an investigative interviewing course. 1 officer finished their ICAT ABLE. We all went to the range for our rifle qualifications. And 1 officer took part in a drug impaired driver course that goes along with the state police training for HGN, standard field sobriety testing. It's another training that they offer to help our officers recognize impairment for different drugs, not just alcohol related stuff. School started. School started. We actually, at the school started, and we've had great starts to the school days. If we have been out at both the elementary, middle schools and the high school, we have been out there at arrival and dismissal. We will continue to do so. We'd like to remind everybody that there's no double parking, and please don't park and get out in the drop-off areas. I would also like to remind all of the students at Cedar Creek with the new schedule. There is a new schedule where they have what is called a 0 period. Buses will still arrive at 7:30 a.m. However, that first hour, from my understanding, students can go get help thinking from any teachers in subjects where they don't
are having issues. And subsequently, everybody has to be in homeroom by 8:30, meaning you can get your own transportation to school. You don't have to show up until 8:30, because that's when they take attendance. With that, anybody who is driving should be reminded that there is an ordinance for no parking, only resident parking during school hours from 6:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. We will be out ticketing because we have already gotten complaints about students parking in areas where they're not supposed to. Some of the thefts and burglaries that we had have been from vehicles. I urge everyone, I can't say it strongly enough, please lock your car doors. Some of these have been from vehicles that were unlocked. I'm not saying it's okay for anybody to steal, but let's make it a little bit harder for somebody to get into vehicles. So please lock your doors. Upcoming things. Mayor Petty already referenced Varsity Day. We're all very excited. Come on out. The recently appointed athletic director, Mr. Ernie, who has been with Cedar Creek for quite some time, is going to, they are doing a fundraiser this year for Tunnel to Tower. Is that correct?
Yes,
Tunnel to Tower. So come on out, show a little bit of support. They have some awesome t-shirts.
it's 9/11.
Yes. So what one of the other special things that he is doing is he is having from Cedar Creek, having police officers walk out on the field with the football team. The Ocean City Fire Captain, Department Captain will be coming out with the Ocean City team. And they will be doing a special ceremony there before the game starts, honoring first responders. So we're all excited about that, as well as all the other wonderful sports activities that are going on. We'd like to remind everybody that the school is a non-smoking area, so there is no smoking of anything on school property. We will be out there asking you to please put whatever it is that you have out. So yeah, that's what we've got. We would like to here in Egg Harbor City extend our condolences to the Northfield Police Department and the New Jersey State Police. One of the worst things that can happen for any first responders is to have to respond to another first responder's incident. Our guys handled themselves so professionally upon coming upon the scene of young Officer Skull's death. And I would like to commend officers, Lieutenant Perna, Officer DeFeo, and Sergeant Mancini for the work that they did. Our fire company also responded out and did wonderful work. I would especially like to thank the Galloway Township Ambulance Squad. Chief Chuck Jewell is a true asset to emergency services, and we are very lucky to have them do our ambulance services here in Egg Harbor City. So that being said, you know, our thoughts and prayers are with the Skull family and with Molly Milne, who was a sheriff's officer's daughter and who was the girlfriend of Officer Skull. So it takes a toll on us. And so if any of our officers have been a little bit short or testy, please understand that we're dealing with stuff that nobody should ever have to see. So that's all. Any questions?
May I say something?
Yes.
And throughout this episode, the chief has been working with a gentleman who was a retired state trooper, Mike Parmenter, and now he works for the state police in these types of issues. And when I saw him at the funeral, he made a point to tell me what a wonderful job that the chief did. And his exact words were, "She gets it." So good job, chief.
All right, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Before the next report, can I say one other thing that I forgot?
Sure.
With the list of lifeguards, I do have a certified lifeguard who is also a supervisor, but she was separated from the list of lifeguards. But her name is Eladia Rivera, and she was the supervisor of the whole entire lake. So that means she's in charge of the head lifeguards, the badge checkers, and the lifeguards. And Eladia did a fantastic job. I don't think the lake has ever been cleaner and managed better than when she was there. Her and her husband Juan, or Tony Rivera, I'm pretty sure I mentioned him. They love the lake. They're good people, and they did an outstanding job. And they work very well
Yes.
The chief cooperated very.
Ladies and gentlemen, I forgot, two things. I did want to make mention of September 24th and 25th, although we do have a council meeting before then, people should prepare and expect delays because the MS bike race will be coming through Atlantic County, so expect delays on Moss Mill Road and Raymond Avenue and Egg Harbor City specifically, but they're gonna be all over the place. I know people complain every year, but you know, hopefully we can help you prepare. So they will be coming through on Saturday, September 24th and Sunday, September 25th. And I do have to say with the late this year, Mayor Jim Petty failed to mention that she also became a certified lifeguard and was out in the water with us when we were doing the Dare Olympics. I don't know whether or not you were out any other time, but you know,
Just on holidays.
and so kudos to you for doing that. So that's all.
Thank you. Joe, do you have anything?
Nope, thank you.
Nope. All right, Jackie, you have anything?
No.
All right. Angela, you're up to the attorney report.
Yes, I just want to remind the council that we need to make a motion with reference to the items discussed in closed session. We need first a motion to direct the city labor attorney to proceed as discussed in closed session.
We have a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
And then
Abstain,
secondly,
Yes, yeah,
you abstain.
yes. Jackie, you have it.
Yes. And then we need a motion to direct myself, the city attorney, to proceed as directed in the closed session with reference to the other issues.
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. One abstention.
Mr. Timbers, abstain. Thank you, that's all I have.
Oh, thanks. Hey, Brian, you're on the agenda this week.
Yeah, I made it. I made it. Just a couple quick things, to just let you know, we're still working on the 1 and 200 block Chicago, Washington, to the design phase now. So we're looking to bid them this fall, and board them late October or November. We are still waiting on the announcement for the 2023 state aid for 100 blocks for the pool. So once we have that, we're to work on what we discussed. Atlantic Avenue, we're still waiting on that pole, still not hearing back from this electric. So ideally Verizon will be moving the pole, but I need this electric. Nothing on it, but it's theirs. And then the last thing that we're just working towards the closing of the sale there. I've been doing a lot of investigating, trying to sort some things out. Narrowing it. That's it, unless anybody has any questions.
Anybody have anything? All right, moving on to number 17, it's a resolution for chapter 159, New Jersey Department of Human Services Municipal Alliance Grant. This is an insertion of item of revenue for the year 2022, the sum of $3,124.38. If there's no questions, comments, or concerns, may I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Roll call, please.
Antonisi? Yes. Brown?
Yes.
Heist?
Yes.
Hesse?
Yes.
Timbers?
Yes.
Trithol?
Yes.
Wright?
Yes.
And Richard.
Yes. 18 is a resolution for utility credit for 111 New York Avenue in the amount of $2,070. This was due to meter being removed and has been shut off from the street for years prior to, asking for the credit of $2,070. If there's no questions or comments, may I
I
have a
have a
motion?
comment.
Sure.
This is flat fees. This is not water sewer fees. These are the flat fees that are on every resident's bill, whether their water's turned on or not turned on, they still have to pay their flat fees. Every one of you guys sitting up here besides me, because I have, paid flat fees. Every resident pays a flat fee. I have no problem crediting somebody if they have a leak in their basement that they didn't know about, or their sprinkler system had a leak. I have a problem crediting flat fees because every person who has water and sewer has to pay the flat fee, whether they're using the water or sewer or not. It should be, to me, I believe it's their responsibility. That's all.
Thank you. Take that into consideration. If there's no more, any more comments or questions, concerns? All right, may I have a motion?
I have a motion.
Second,
Second.
I have a roll call, please.
Antonisi? No. Brown?
Yes.
Heist?
No.
Hesse?
Yes.
Timbers?
No.
Trithol,
No.
Wright.
No.
And Richie.
No. All right, moving on to number 19, sewer credit refund, 43 Liverpool Avenue, amount of $157.50. Apparently the tenant of this residence had a plumbing problem upstairs bathroom, estimated 21,000 gallons of water overflow in the amount of $157.50. If there's any question, if there are no questions or comments, may I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Roll call, please.
Etnese,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Heiss.
Yes.
Hesse,
Yes.
Timbers,
Yes.
Trithol,
Yes.
Wright,
Yes.
and Richie.
Yes. And number 20 is a resolution for another sewer credit refund in the amount of, or I'm sorry, 1603 Beethoven Street, in the amount of $420, 56,000 gallons of water from a water main break. If there's no questions or comments, may I have a motion?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Etnese,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Heiss,
Yes.
Hesse,
Yes.
Timbers,
Yes.
Trithol,
Yes.
Wright.
Yes.
And Richie.
Yes. Moving on to 21, it's a resolution to authorize the extension for the memorandum of understanding with Stockton University for an outdoor market to October 4th of 2022. Through the MVP grant, we will fund $2,500 to Stockton Sustainability Farm to provide fresh vegetables and staff for the market. If there's no questions or comments, may I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Etnese,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Heiss.
Yes.
Hesse,
Yes.
Timbers,
Yes.
Trithol.
Yes.
Wright.
Yes.
And Richie.
Yes. All right, number 22, we have a public hearing scheduled for ordinance number 11, 2022, amending the supplementing chapter 255, section 14. Title charges for water and sewer service of the code of the city of Egg Harbor. May I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make a motion.
Second? All in favor? All right, we're now open for a public hearing regarding ordinance number 11 of 2022. Anybody from the public or council like to speak on it? Going once, twice.
Motion. I'll make it.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 11, 2022?
Make a
So
motion.
moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Okay. Etnese,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Heiss.
Yes.
Hesse,
Yes.
Timbers,
Yes.
Trithol,
Yes.
Wright.
Yes.
And Richie.
Yes. Number 23 is being tabled. I am under the impression, correct?
Yes, we have to notice.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I'm sorry.
Make a motion.
Yeah, motion to advertise, and I have to get them. Yeah.
Make a motion.
Second, all in favor? Sorry about that. All right, so number 23 is being tabled until we gather further information.
For some noticing issues, so it'll be republished as well.
Yes. So moving on to 24, may I have a motion to pay the bills?
Make a motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Okay. Etnese.
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Heiss.
Yes.
Hesse. Timbers,
Yes.
Trithol,
Yes.
Wright.
Yes.
And Richie.
Yes. Mayor, the floor is yours for any final comments?
Thank you, James, for coming. Happy to see you again. I know, we've been together since the beginning, as I think Mace was too. And Cedar Creek has been such a blessing to this community and to our children. It has given so much to our kids, so much hope and so much opportunity that you just can't put a price on that. So, and your administration is awesome throughout your district, but of course, especially at Cedar Creek. And thank you for your leadership and all you do.
Thank you right back. Every time I drive down that street and I see the flags or the fall, when I see the straw man dress that I know our kids made with the elementary school kids together, it's the way it's supposed to be. So thank you.
Is that everything? Mayor?
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Weiss?
Nothing.
Councilwoman Brown?
I would just like to, I guess, give remembrance to everyone that lost their lives who was affected by September 11th. It was quite a few years ago, but it still changed our lives as we know it. And I think we need to recognize those first responders that gave their lives, as well as their family members that were left behind. That's all.
Thank you. Councilman Trifon.
First, to the chief. Public doesn't realize what public service, what we do, police, fire, and everything else. Please make sure that they're okay and everything else. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Councilman Timbers? Thank you. Councilman Wright?
Just a couple things. James, thank you for coming out and everything that you do for Egg Harbor City and Crusaders. I just want to mention to the public, please, when you're voting on October 6th, put everything aside and think about these kids, because that's what it's for. Hopefully it passes this time and goes through and people actually see that we're voting for these kids and these kids' futures rather than anything else. But also with that being said, the Crusaders opened up this weekend. Didn't go quite the way we wanted it to go. And like I'm going back on Cedar Creek, last year I think we had about 16 kids at every level. And a lot of people, they go on these Facebook pages and talk all this stuff about Egg Harbor City, and half of them probably never even left Egg Harbor City to see other towns. We jumped from 16 kids at taxi to 40 kids at taxi. We jumped from 16 kids at Pee Wee to almost 35 kids at Pee Wee. We jumped from 16 kids at JV to almost 35 kids at JV, and probably 14 kids at varsity last year, 25 kids at varsity. And that's because of the high school. What Cedar Creek brings to this town is unbelievable. As you know, I travel with these kids from South Jersey all the way to North Jersey, and everybody knows about Little Egg Harbor City. I mean, even when Bo had his press conference with the Seahawks, you know, he gave Egg Harbor City their little shout out. You know, it's just a little town that really nobody would even know about. I mean, me being Brent, I mean, I came from Motion City, bought my house out here. My wife's like, oh, we're gonna go look at a house in Egg Harbor City. And I had no idea where Egg Harbor City was, to be honest with you. But I fell in love with this town 18 years ago, and it's a blessing. And then I just want to give a big shout out to Cedar Creek, and hopefully everything, Gammy, no pressure, hopefully everything goes through. But this weekend we got Violent coming to town. We also at Crusaders are doing a first responders day. So come out and show our supports and come out there and see the future Cedar Creek kids. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hesse?
All I have to say is on September 24th, we're going to have the Egg Harbor City Garden Club is going to have a seed and plant swap. So it will be held at the log cabin, and everyone is invited. And it basically is just to get together and collect your seeds and plants and just exchange and just have a good time. So that'll be September 24th at 10 a.m., 10 to 12. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Anthony C.
Just along with what Mason said, our First Responders Day at Crusaders is this Saturday, and we really invite everybody in the community that's a first responder or military to come out and just be recognized. They're going to be at each game, and we're starting early because we're going to have our Taxi B team kids out early. So please come cheer them on. These are first year, never played football kids. So come on out and cheer them on and help support the stands. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll finish up with Ms. Arena. Kudos, man. Great job to you, your team, everything that's going on. A lot of respect. Keep it going. A lot of good things in the future.
Thank you for the support.
Yeah, absolutely. In addition to what Councilwoman Brown said, yes, this Sunday is September 11th. Let's not forget what happened that day. Teach our children, have our children teach our grandchildren. Let it not become hindsight. It was a changing moment in American history and the world history. So just please don't ever let yourself or anybody forget that day. Chief, to your team, respect, a lot of respect to them. I'm right there with them. It's a tough job, and to do something like that takes a lot, and God bless them. So with that, I'd like to open up to public for any last comments. Anybody?
Yeah, I have two questions and a comment. It's Nanette Galloway. I just wanted to announce that the Green Team will be having green drinks event on 6 to 8 p.m. Tuesday, September 13th at Firehouse Grill. It's just come as you are, and it's not an organized event. It's a social gathering of people concerned about the environment. Everyone pays for their own drinks and buys their own food. It's just a fun night out with people concerned about sustainability. And I had two questions. I guess your attorney might be able to answer them. I understand that the Acme site was sold recently, and I'm curious to know if the redevelopment agreement goes with the land or if it's over with.
Yes, it does go to the land in that.
Okay,
I believe so, right? They're gonna do the same thing.
He'll
right?
have to petition the city council to be named redevelopment.
Redevelop.
The plan is still in place, but he's not the named redevelopment.
But he's planning on doing the same thing, right?
so there will be
Exactly.
additional action that has to be taken by the city council?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, do you know when that's going to happen?
there hasn't been an application, hasn't been a request yet.
Right, he hasn't made a request yet.
Okay, and then I am following another story in another town about galvanized steel lines having to be replaced. It's a community in my coverage area and $65 million to replace their galvanized lines, and I'm wondering what the status is of that in Egg Harbor City.
Galvanized water lines, what do we?
Water lines, yeah.
So there are no galvanized mains in Egg Harbor City. You have a bunch of old cast iron. There are a couple, probably 20 to 30 galvanized services. Keith has a good count on them. We had to identify them all through the lead and copper plan that's been required over the last couple of years. So Keith has a good handle on where they are. It's only services, but it comes up in lead and copper because galvanized services typically have what's called a lead gooseneck, which is the connection to the main, so it's a short lead portion. But like I said, he's got a good handle on that. It's just a handful of services. It's not a whole bunch.
So what about the residents from the connection to the house?
Keith had to send them notices. Once he identified which properties they were, he had to send notices to the affected property owners. So my understanding is that anyone who has a galvanized service has gotten a notice.
Okay, because in this other community, they're applying for grants. They passed an ordinance tonight, and they're applying, for half of the money that they need to do this over the next 10 years.
Yeah, there's money through the lead and copper survey and that whole program. There is money available. From what I understand, at Carver City's, the configuration of our services would not qualify for very much funding at all. It's like literally a couple percent chance.
And my other question in relation to that is the distribution system for the water. Is that going to be the responsibility of American Water, or that will be retained by the city?
Yes, as part of the sale, the water extraction system, the wells, the treatment and distribution would all be transferred to New Jersey American Water.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public have any comments? Well, once, going twice, my motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?